Melvin get from the Office of Civil Defense. He's the administrator who just wrapped up the procurement and awarding of new Guam hotel quarantine and ISO facilities. Charles Esteves. Good morning, Charles.
Hey, good morning.
Hi.
How's today?
Yeah, could you clarify that? Are they quarantine or are some of them isolation facilities? Or just
They're both quarantine facilities.
both quarantine, so they're not isolation at all. Does
Correct.
this include, well, first, the contracts for like Perlis Court and all the other ones, are they already done? They're over with?
As far as I'm tracking, yes.
Okay. And so this is it.
Those all expired, I believe, on the 18th.
Okay.
Okay.
When did Packstar expire? Is it the 23rd? Was it extended for a month?
No, it wasn't extended. So we moved everyone out of Packstar yesterday.
No, but the contract that I saw, it said April, I think it expired on the 22nd or 23rd of April.
I apologize. I'm not sure.
Okay.
How did the moving everyone out of Pacific Star go, Charles?
Went fairly smooth. So we moved them to 2 quarantine facilities, and we actually maxed out capacity of both.
Oh, you maxed out, so you're looking at procuring another facility.
Yes. And just to give you the process, so what happened was on the 7th, we developed the concept of operations, went through the scope of work the next day, and actually submitted the requisition on May 9th. And so afterwards, we gave the warning order to the National Guard that they will be conducting facility management. We gave that on the 11th, and then basically that Friday, for that entire week, GSA put out the request for interest and also request for quotes. And they received requests for quotes, requests for interest that Friday. We're also able to negotiate prices, and we actually conducted the site inspection and walkthrough that same day. And then the next day, GSA was able to award the vendor late, I believe like at 10 or 11 that night. So they signed the very next day on Sunday, but that Saturday we had the operations and transition meeting with the previous QFAC team, and then took it from there. And then by Monday, everyone was able to move. So everything had to happen fairly quickly. So I'm just glad that everyone was able to get out of get into these new facilities.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, Charles, in that the governor during the press conference yesterday had defended the first round of procurement, and I'll use that term loosely, of these quarantine facilities. And she had said that, her main argument is that we had to act so quickly that, anyway, we had to act so quickly. But you guys have shown that you were able to act just as quickly to secure these facilities, and I don't know what to call it, because if I feel like we call it the right way, somebody's going to get their feelings hurt. So should we call it the traditional way, Charles? What should we call it?
We just call it procurement here. So, I mean, it's emergency procurement. So, and just let you know, this all stems from the governor's order to get out Packstar as soon as possible. Right. Into these facilities. So, that was basically the trigger point that, she said, do not fail and get everyone into these facilities. Mm-hmm. And so, we made it happen.
Wait, you said there was an order from the governor to get everybody out of Packstar?
No, to get everyone into these procured facilities. So, the 18th was the deadline because, just the extenuous. Basically, there was no plan to extend any of the previously executed contracts. So, to meet her intent, that's where we worked to procure these quarantine facilities.
Okay, but you're not aware whether or not the Packstar contract had expired, or is? I'm just wondering is it still in effect? Because
I am not. I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Okay, so you don't know if we're still paying for 389 unused rooms.
I do not know.
You could find out first.
I can't imagine we would be, but
you've seen stranger things.
I'm just saying, all I know is that we have these quarantine facilities and we have purchase orders for them with agreements, and so we'll be able to pay off the invoices that come to us.
And then what will it mean in terms of the reimbursability of these expenses, seeing as how they were done correctly from the beginning this time?
Well, the agreements have the termination clause that's required. We have all the documents. When I say the documents, I'm talking about, we have various quotes. We have emails from different vendors when we request for quotes or interest, transmittal confirmations, requisitions. So, we have as much we have an abundance of documents. So we're going to work to input this, and we're also working to input the previously executed non-congregate shelters, based off of the documents that's provided there. So it's not the issue's not dead in the water for reimbursement. We're just going to see what FEMA actually says in terms of what they may require in addition to what's already there.
So you're saying that you are going back on the first round of securing the services that was performed by the governor's legal counsel, and you're now trying to put that all together in a way that it could be presented to FEMA for their review?
Absolutely. Like I said, it was done during the height of the emergency, and there's a lot of processes that are changing every day in terms of the FEMA Public Assistance Program on what's eligible and what's not. This is the first time, at least since I've been here, that we've utilized non-congregate shelters. Most of the times we've utilized school gyms, right, and Tier 2 shelters. So I think there will be a little learning curve on actually processing this as a public assistance project.
So you're basically saying that there's a possibility that this might fly, and if it does fly, then we won't need the $4 million from the CARES Act that's budgeted for mandatory quarantine protocol, and we could probably use that for people that might need the money.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Charles, what do you think, though, because of your your chances of pulling this off? Because I know that you're going to take it to FEMA and be like, hey, we're acting during the height of the emergency, but I'm pretty sure the feds watch the news and they might have a different take on it, and the take might be that we had a guy running around town ordering people what to do, and then the whole process had to be rammed through this emergency superpowers.
Yeah, and fortunately, the federal government, especially FEMA, they don't interfere with local matters, unless it has to do with federal funding, and that's already funding that's been awarded, commingling, supplanting, whatever the case may be. But because we haven't been awarded anything on the FEMA public assistance side, I'm just remaining hopeful.
Yeah,
that's all, and we're going to get provide as much documentation as we can.
It's not like FEMA's here, so they're probably just kicking back and watching what's going on.
Watching the show.
Yeah, so.
They're literally. We know they watch the show. Yeah, I want to say that this whatever issues that may have surfaced is unique to Guam, but I'm pretty sure, given the uniqueness of this situation, that other states, possibly territories, are experiencing the same thing.
Right. And that's the thing. That's what we seem to be hearing. It's this. I don't want to say it's an excuse, but it was in the height of the emergency, so we did what we did as fast as we did, and so we're okay. There was no intent to do anything wrong.
The governor defended it pretty hard at the press conference, Charles, and her.
So did the AG.
Yeah, so did the AG. So their comments are kind of opposite of what you had said to us last week, and that you had your questions, you didn't want to sign anything. So how do we kind of match up with and I'm not asking you to go toe to toe with the governor, but if you're able to just respond to her defense of this procurement that she says is, what did she say? Nothing was incorrect.
Yeah, nothing was illegal.
Nothing was illegal.
Yeah, like I said in my last interview, I think everyone was doing what they believe was in the best interest, and I'm not a lawyer, so the interpretation of the chapter, the Title 10, Chapter 19. Mm-hmm. If that is the interpretation, then that's what they're acting upon. And the thing is, like I said, no one's ever asked me to do anything illegal. I don't believe there's malicious intent. I'm just happy that we were able to facilitate the process and the procurement process of these quarantine facilities.
And I get you on the malicious intent. It seems more like, I don't want to say incompetence, but maybe, we're a little green when it comes to the procurement, because you're right, you're not a lawyer, but you know how to do procurement.
Yes, and so we handled it, the quarantine facilities, we handled it this round, and so now we have the purchase orders for the 2 quarantine sites. And also we're handling the procurement for the homeless safe haven project.
So where are we with that?
Yeah, so right now there was requests for interest and requests for quotes sent out to realtors, and so we are targeting 1 or more facilities. And the thing with these facilities is we can't just throw the homeless into our current quarantine facilities because they're migratory, and a lot of them, we all know where the hotspots are: Hagåtña, Tamuning, right? So I think there's a big focus on the homeless in Hagåtña. So right now that is going through the procurement process. So we're going to let GSA do their work and get the request for interest and request for quotes for hardened shelters, concrete shelters.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to say, can you talk about the specs for that facility?
Yeah. So it would be a non-congregate shelter as well. We have to make sure that each room has their own bathroom facilities, as well as basically everything you would find in a hotel, but not. So apartment complexes, old hotels, possible warehouses that can be built out as non-congregate shelters. Because the thing is, if we just develop a congregate shelter for the homeless, then we would have to enforce the social distancing aspect of it.
Right.
And so just let you know that is something that's currently being worked through the procurement process as well.
Mm-hmm.
You have a timeline on this, Charles, for the safe haven?
Unfortunately, I do not. I mean, ASAP. Pretty much everything is always going to be ASAP, given that we're still in an emergency situation.
Right.
We want to make sure that we don't. For this particularly, we want to make sure we don't rush it. The model that we're following is called Project Room Key, and so it's a model utilized in California, and it's been a successful model because FEMA went ahead and said that it is reimbursable. Basically, what they did in Los Angeles for the homeless. So it was a newly converted motel that they utilized for these the quarantine and isolation of these vulnerable population groups.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think that you anticipate a timeline quicker than the 2 months that we've seen? Because since the start of this pandemic and the public health emergency that was declared, we've heard a lot of talk about sheltering the homeless. We heard a lot of talk about putting them at Paseo. We heard a lot of talk about putting them in these tents, and then all that talk was thrown out the window for whatever reason. So I guess that's what I'm asking, Charles. Is I know you're saying ASAP, and is there a reasonable timeline kind of attached to that? So it's definitely not going to be 2 months.
Yeah. Well, I don't imagine it taking 2 months. And now that we were able to procure the quarantine facilities, and I believe we're working to procure another one, only because like I said, we've already reached capacity.
Right.
So that's going to be the next major project that we'll be working with GSA on.
Mm-hmm.
And additionally, we want to make sure we have buy-in from, of course, the Homeless Coalition, the volunteer organizations active in disasters, because we're not in the shelter management business, at least on the long-term side of things.
Right.
So we want to make sure that we have a good partner that's able to, that's comfortable with the project.
Going back to Wyndham and Santa Fe, what's the length of the term for this contract? Is it a month or is it 2 months?
So it's actually an open purchase order. So as we utilize rooms, it's being charged off of the purchase order, and so it allows us flexibility to terminate if need be, or to extend or modify the terms of basically to amend the PO as needed.
Mm-hmm. Do we have to be under this declaration of a public health emergency in order to get federal reimbursement? I mean, like, because I think this expires June 5th, right?
Yeah.
June 5th?
Yeah.
Would we still need to be in a state of emergency past June 5th and to have these quarantine isolation facilities up and running to be eligible for FEMA reimbursement?
Yes, so it's well, we already declared the local disaster, put Guam in a state of emergency, but it's also on the FEMA side on the disaster period. So Guam was received its major disaster declaration sometime in March, if I'm not mistaken, and then I don't know the end period, so I would we would have to work with FEMA to determine what is the end period for this major disaster declaration. So we may escalate the PCOR and go to PCOR 3, but as long as we have COVID positive people and we expect there to be a second wave, so it's not that the emergency is entirely over. Additionally, for these non-congregate shelters, the reimbursement period is handled in 30-day increments. So May 22nd is the expiration, so we submitted a request to extend the non-congregate shelter for another 30 days.
The request to FEMA?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're on our second extension. So our first extension. So this will be our second extension.
How many extensions do we get?
There's for as long as the emergency continues, or as long as we deem that our most effective mitigation measure is the quarantining of folks.
Charles, I wanted to, because we haven't been able to discuss this double pay issue with you, but you being in civil defense and it kind of cutting your teeth on emergencies, whether they be pandemic related or weather related. What's your read on this whole double pay issue? I'm curious.
So I just let you know, we have paid out double time or double pay in the past, and it was a different situation. It was the typhoon type situation. Facilities were closed. I can't speak upon the AG's opinion. I can take it and determine if it's applicable for our agency. Right. So, just based on it, based on the guidance, were we in a declared state of emergency? Yes. What was our facility closed? That's really open to interpretation as well. For us here, we would maybe define that as we're not giving tours, we're not holding training events here at Civil Defense, we're not conducting exercises. We send home all our non-essential personnel and also cease the activities of our non-essential programs here. Then, were there people at home getting paid, and did we have to bring people on? And, the answer is yes. So, if I were to say that our folks are eligible for, some sort of compensation, and, remember the AG's opinion didn't necessarily say that, the double pay was not ineligible for everyone. And a lot of this has to do with a fiscal issue as well. It's really a cash crunch, right? But in terms of the reimbursement, I can say that that everything that's in a pre-written agreement, the DOA personnel rules and regulations, is potentially reimbursable under FEMA Public Assistance Program.
Right.
So that includes a number of things. That's everything from overtime for both exempt, non-exempt, and exempt employees. And I just let you know that that also includes, and this it probably won't be paid out, but directors are eligible for, under the FEMA Public Assistance Program, directors are eligible for overtime.
But in local law, are they eligible for overtime?
So there is no, and the answer is no, and so that's where the two will conflict, right? But
great,
there
because I
is-
thought the public assistance was existing laws had to be in place.
Prior to the
Right.
pandemic.
Absolutely, and so it will be more for those people at the non-director director level. It really depends on what's in the rules and regs. I know they have that the provision in there for paying exempt employees during emergencies as
So,
well.
Charles, you're basically saying that the double pay is FEMA reimbursable. Is that am I accurate?
Everything in a pre-existing agreement. So if there was a premium, and we've paid out this type of premium in the past. So my only recommendation would be to submit the FEMA project worksheet first, and then if they approve it, then make sure have the agency would have the paperwork, and we go back and and the thing with these reimbursements is you cannot get reimbursed unless you pay it, right? And that's sometimes we have trouble with that during post disaster.
Right.
Yeah. So we're going to put in for it. I understand the opinion for the frontliners, and I think it was a very bold and congratulatory move yesterday on the compromise between the Guam Federation of Teachers and what was worked on the policy side.
Right.
And so my role is not zero on the policy side. I'm just here to help maximize the amount of reimbursements we can post disaster.
So
Right.
did you? It seems like you have a pretty good relationship with John Jr. Calvo. Did you tell him like, hey, we could probably use FEMA reimbursement for this double pay issue?
Well, I tell them what's eligible and what's not.
So he's aware.
Everyone's aware. It's the guidance.
I don't know about that.
I'm saying I put out the guidance, and like I said, it's the AG's opinion does does play a big role in this, right? Because if FEMA may ask the same question, and they may come to the same determination, because everything still has to run through their legal counsel as well, and they may ask the question: was your facility closed? Did you meet these gates? So it's when I always talk about what's reimbursable or not, I always just talk in terms of eligibility and what's possibly and
Right.
versus
And then they make the final call, right?
correct.
So you're saying that, and I think the AG had said something that it's really up to the directors. So if you're of the opinion that the double pay is eligible for FEMA reimbursement, can we then assume that you're going to file something on double pay for civil defense employees?
Well, yes. And so if we put in the project worksheet and we're eligible, then we would put it in. We're a little unique because we're 100% federally funded, right? So there's a little bit more steps on our end, right? Because we can't utilize federal funds to pay back other federal funds.
Mm-hmm.
So there are other steps that we would have to do. Like I said, it really all depends on what comes back as being eligible or not. And I talk about the use of federal funds to pay other federal funds. Under the FEMA Public Assistance Program, straight time is potentially paid out eligible as well. So if a person is paid out from a non-general fund account, say a federal fund, then potentially their straight time is reimbursable. Limited term appointments, straight time and overtime is reimbursable. The same with seasonal employees as well. So there's a lot of potential reimbursable items that's listed in the FEMA Public Assistance Program Policy Guide, and anyone who wants a copy, it can be found online. And the thing is that the policy is changing, depending on the severity and the unique circumstance of this emergency. I would not be surprised if new policy assistance guidance comes out. We're on version 3.1 of the current PA policy guidance, And this was issued on April 2018. And so I can tell you that normally when you have a major disaster, like for example what happened in Puerto Rico and Texas with Maria and Harvey, sometimes there's the need to issue out alternative guidance. And so right now the guidance we're using is version 3.1, and we're just standing by for any additional activities that may be eligible under the public assistance program.
Did this 3.1 guidance, new PA guidelines say anything about it's okay to bypass the traditional way of doing emergency procurement? We don't need any paper trail or documents or signed contracts in the height of an emergency?
Well, I can tell you that everything with the public assistance program is document heavy. And so,
no, but does it say that in the 3.1 or the 3.0 or the 2.9?
I think I know
anywhere
the answer to this.
It says that you don't need to have a paper trail. You could just talk and
email people.
Yeah.
Well, what it does say is that basically the territory. So the territory should, the states and territories should make their decisions, free and apart from what's reimbursable or not. Like I said, it's document heavy, and so if we have the documents, the required documentation, then they should support eligibility for a project.
Apart from what is reimbursable or not.
Okay. So we shouldn't make our actions based on what's reimbursable or not.
Right. Do what you got to do. In other words.
Right. But in the emails,
absolutely.
it shows there was we need this for it to be reimbursed, and so it's kind of clear to me that they were trying to go for federal reimbursement.
They just didn't know obviously they didn't know the process.
Yeah, and well, we want to make sure we maximize, the public assistance program, because if we didn't want to maximize reimbursement under the public assistance program, then there would have been no point in getting a major disaster declaration. We would just have handled it as a local emergency.
Yeah, I just feel like that's why you're in the position that you're in. I mean, that's why you have a Homeland Security advisor. That's why you appoint people based on their experience.
I just feel
utilize them when the time arises.
Adelup is the only one who thinks that this first round of procurement was okay. Everybody else is thinking that we should have just went with OCD and GSA from the get-go. I don't know anyone else who's not employed at Adelup who's defending the first round of procurement.
I know one.
Sorry. I can't speak on that.
Right. Yeah.
I do know that all a lot of the actions. And you brought up John Junior Calvo earlier. So we work with the chief on. We've been working on the chief on a lot of these new procurements. Just today, this morning, we're working right now to see if we can procure healthcare wraparound services. And so he was asking me if I'm tracking it on DLAN. DLAN is our system of record for all requests. And so, we informed him that we did put a ticket in, and so he, that we're tracking these things through the Emergency Operations Center.
What's healthcare wraparound services?
Previously, the health services of the Pacific at the old quarantine, they're providing
which old quarantine? I'm sorry.
The Pacific Star.
Okay, so they were employed there.
So they're providing services. So the need to provide services at these quarantine facilities is being assessed by public health to determine what the scope of work and the need for it. So so the ticket is in. Once they come back and say yes, we definitely need the service because we can't support our nurses are engaged elsewhere. Then we would work to do the emergency procurement for these services. Mm-hmm. And that like I said in the previous interview, that's normally the process is we look internally within the government of Guam to see what we can use to support these resource requests. And if we don't have this capability, then we conduct emergency procurement. And if we don't have the capability on the island, then we ask basically for through FEMA to provide provide capability.
What about the tier 2 clinics? Is there any discussion on how they're going to be compensated or anything on paper? Have you been asked to put eyes on that or to work on anything with that?
No, I believe that's between the Cure Action team and Guam Memorial Hospital. So okay. I would have to defer the question to them.
And then also, so obviously the governor has the health emergency superpowers lane, and then we have the traditional proper lane or whatever. Do you anticipate any more expenditures or purchases being made with the governor's health emergency superpowers?
Well, I mean, we're conducting emergency procurement right now through those powers. So, yeah, I mean, I think all future procurement will,
I mean, like the way it was done the first time, Charles. Them using these superpowers without involvement of OCD or GSA.
I just know for all future procurement, it will be done through GSA. As far as I'm tracking.
Okay. So we're looking at wraparound services, and we're looking at a hardened facility for Project Safe Haven, and also the possibility of another quarantine facility. What about isolation facility?
So isolation facility is we're still being worked out through GSA.
Okay.
So nothing's been awarded yet. The operation over days and it is ongoing.
I thought their contract expired, or was that renewed?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
Regarding that one, but I do know we're trying to get the skilled nursing facility up and running to transfer the folks from days in there, and if we can't get that facility up and running, then we are looking, like I said, to procure a separate isolation facility.
Right on. That, man, thank you so much for your time, Charles. I guess in closing, you guys are working the procurement, the traditional route. You're also going to file for the double pay. I'm correct in that for your civil defense staff?
Well, the thing is, I mean, it's, with the new COVID Heroes bill, so if that is applicable to our agency, then, we obviously would not be filing for, because, from what I'm tracking, that is for those people that were not covered under the AG's opinion, right? If that's my understanding.
I see.
So I think it's that that is to cover a gap, right? Because it's essentially the same thing, being able to get leave and then to cash out that leave.
But only at 120, because the cap. I think they cap the what is it? It's 240 hours, and then you could cash out 120 and take 120. Is it CTO? Is that right?
Yeah. So I haven't read it in its entirety, but when I saw it, it's great that it actually fills the gap, right? That may not be eligible, and like I said, it's when an agency puts in documentation, it's FEMA's determination on whether or not it's eligible, and so.
Right. So then, if we pass this new bill, like let's say 250, there's 259 that's speaker.
359.
Oh, 359 that's the speakers, and you have 357, which is vice speaker's bill, and they both have are lean towards paying out or resolving this issue of double pay. Then, because this is a new law, then it wouldn't necessarily be eligible for FEMA reimbursement.
Because it was written in the middle of the pandemic.
Right.
Correct.
We're learning, Charles. We're learning.
Yeah. So remember, pre-written agreements is the key. Documentation is the key.
Right. So if the AG had came out and said, "Yep, let's pay out the double pay," then we would have been good to go with FEMA reimbursement.
Correct. And
it seems so easy. Jesus.
Yeah, and like I said, those are policy decisions.
Or the governor could just pay it out, and then we'd be good to go, right?
Right. We wouldn't have to do a bill, and I don't get it. I don't understand why.
Well, they would, people would still read the policy, and they would probably make that. They may make that determination as well on whether or not we pass a 3-pronged test. So,
right,
so like I said, it's those decisions are policy decisions. What we do here is more on the process side. You know, and like I said, we work to make sure that we get maximum reimbursement on the public assistance side. You know, it's those decisions made at that level is, you know, I'm sure it's in the best interest of those folks, right? I mean, that were deemed ineligible for the double time or the double pay. So I'm pretty sure that we'll see, you know, a lot of you know, things like this that are going to be implemented to help fill gaps. You know, because you know, during emergency events, nothing ever really goes according to plan.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you know, there's this popular saying that we have in the military is that, you know, no plan survives first contact with the enemy, right? And so we are learning every day. We are developing.
I feel like that should be Adaloop's motto going to these press conferences.
Well, you know, I mean, you know, you know, we're learning.
We had a plan. Questions.
Yeah, and just let you know, I mean, we have. It's not that plans were thrown away. We have implemented plans. Like for example, the Guam Conference Emergency Management Plan that for the EOC. I mean, that's in full effect.
Right.
Has been full effect, and it's one of the prerequisites to actually get a disaster declaration. And so, you know, plans are in place. You know, and like I said, we're going to do our best to ensure that we maximize the federal reimbursement.
Well, thanks
right.
for that, Charles. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
All right,
Okay,
take care.
wash your hands.
Okay, bye all.
Okay, yeah, nice. 9:29. Let's keep it on the phones here. You know, I want to bring Angel Sablan, who's the executive director of the Mayor's Council of Guam.